You're watching Word Alive Bible Study at Word Tabernacle Church.
I need a word, life-changing word.
A place of relevant ministry where relationships are built, needs are met, purpose is fulfilled, and God is enjoyed. Join us now as we get stronger, grow deeper, and go higher.
Stronger, deeper, and higher every day. We need a word.
Let's jump right into the reading, because what we left off last week was talking about discipline. Everybody say discipline. It's about this issue of our spiritual disciplines. And I want to spend some moments on this. As a matter of fact, I've got some things I want to say that are not going to be in your note sheet, but it's just kind of in my heart to spend a little time. So let me kind of show you where this issue, because the issue of conquering, the issue of receiving what God is doing in our life, it's not just some spiritual thing. Because remember, Joshua chapter 6, God begins to speak, and he lets Joshua know, I've already given you the land. I've already given Jericho to you. But that doesn't mean that Joshua does not still have work to do. That's where I want to park. That's where I want to hang out, how we understand these disciplines. Now, look at what God says to them, because initially this kind of I missed it. But as I'm reading, I'm like, wait a minute, God, this is the piece I need to spend some moments on. If you notice at chapter 6, verse 3, he says, you shall march. Everybody say march, march. You shall march around the city. All the men of war going around the city once. So he tells them again, he says on the seventh day, you shall march. Y'all, marching and walking are not the same thing. Marching suggests a discipline. Marching suggests a rhythm. Marching suggests a focus. Marching suggests being able to be at unity with folk. You know, because get this. Most of you, you're soaring and you're doing your various activities. When you're walking, everybody's at a different pace. When you're walking, everybody kind of is relaxed, kind of doing their own thing. But when we're marching suggests a discipline and a lack of a casual nature that walking does not suggest. And I want to park here for a moment, because I think too often times, and I know some of you are going to be so offended by the stuff I'm about to teach, but we get to this point, y'all, where we don't like discipline. And the reality of it is, in order for God to move in my life, there's got to be an element of discipline. Now, let me just park here for a moment, because we live in a church culture, and this is going to be a little tough for some people that as I walk through this, but we live in a church culture where we want to be, watch now pay attention, where we want to be spiritual, but we don't want to be religious. Now, think about it for a moment. And I know on the surface, I know what you're thinking. You're like, but isn't that the goal? Is for me to be spiritual and not religious? But check this out. I don't get to grow deep unless I do groundwork. If there's not an element of groundwork, I don't go deep. Too oftentimes we want to be spiritual, but we don't want the discipline associated. That's the religious side. See, without daily devotion, you can't be spiritual. The fact that you do it daily means you do it religiously, which means you can't be spiritual unless you're religious. So all folk that, you want to be all deep, and I don't need church. You can't be deep without religion. You can't be deep without having an element of religiosity and discipline attached to it. I can't be deep unless I have a prayer life. Well, it's not just a casual prayer life. It is a prayer life that I'm actively daily praying. If I'm daily praying, that means I'm religiously praying. If I'm religiously praying, then it's because of my religion that I get spirituality. This is where we blow it as Christians, because we are so caught up in being, I want to be deep. I want to be spiritual, but I can't be deep and spiritual without doing the groundwork of discipline. And I want to spend some more. It's not on your note sheet, but this has been in my seat. It's been in my heart, because, and I'm going to apologize to y'all. want to apologize because I have said something that's maybe not true. And I got convicted about it. I've been making these blanket statements that we come out of this, we're going to be better. Some of y'all not going to be better when you come out of this. Let me tell you why. Because the whole point of it is to develop a different set of habits, a different discipline. If I don't develop so let me give you an example. If you're at home staring at the refrigerator all day, if you don't develop a discipline around eating, when you finally get out, you won't be better. You're going to be heavier and sicker. But if you take the moment and say, I'm going to displace bad habits for good habits. I'm going to develop a set of disciplines. And that's what we started talking about last week, that the way I conquer is I've got to have the ability to have a discipline. And so let me just say something that's not on your sheet about this issue of discipline. I'm going to give you 4 of these. They're going to throw them up real fast, but let me give them to you. The first discipline that I want us to think about before I get into the next set is let's develop the discipline of study and self-examination. The discipline of study and self-examination. This issue of, y'all, because let me help y'all. Oh boy, I'm just messing all y'all theologies up. Y'all, oftentimes we want to change our internal life. Please get this. But the easiest way to change myself internally is to change what's externally around me. See, the external, so the starting point, God tells Joshua, march, develop discipline. Look at the heaviness of the text. Bear the ark, discipline. He's telling, do it 6 times. And on 7th day, do it 7 times. It's developing discipline that is the key to conquering. The first one I want to suggest is just developing some study and some self-examination. You know, spending a moment in this season to get something in my brain, to develop the discipline of actually reading a book. You know, to develop the discipline of, let me just say this for free. This is not the time for more television. This is the time to develop study. And then not just study, but then examine me. God, what is it that I see in this, and how does it impact who I am? I think the first discipline I just want to throw at us, because I'm talking about disciplines that are necessary for conquering, disciplines that are necessary for success, the disciplines that we have to develop in order to be the successful people, because this Joshua series is a series on success, but it's not success of name it and claim it. That's why God told him, shut up. He says, listen, y'all, some of y'all won't like this. You can't always talk yourself into better. You got to do yourself into better. You got to, I'm all big on having a positive attitude, all that. That's all great. But I've got to have a willingness to develop another set of disciplines. Let me give you the second one. And again, these are not in your note sheets, but I want us to grab this. The second one is the discipline of silence and solitude. You know, many of us, we just struggle with being in a room without the TV on, without conversation, just having a moment of silence and solitude. I don't know who this is for, but I'm going to throw this in for free for my young people since y'all home from school and maybe y'all are watching me on your break or whatever from your Zoom classes. One of the best things you can do to make yourself ready for someone else is to like being with just you. I mean, if you don't like you, how you gonna expect me to like you? You don't even want to be with you. I need to have a moment where it's not always a text going. It's not always a TikTok. It's not always a Twitter. It's not always a tweet. It's not always a post. It's not always checking an email. It's silence and solitude. It's just having a moment to sit, develop that discipline in this season. Develop that discipline. That's the second one. And here's the third one. And I'm going to go to the rest of the text in a minute, but this triggered something in my spirit about having a conversation about our disciplines, about the things I displace that are detrimental to me and the things that I pick up that are going to be helpful to me. Let me give you the third one. The third one, and this is really helpful for this season we're in, family. The third one is develop the discipline of simplicity and fasting. Develop the discipline of simplicity. Everybody say simplicity. Yeah? Simplicity and fasting. That in this season, everything doesn't have to be fancy. In this season, I have to learn to be satisfied without a whole lot. And I think oftentimes we have complicated our lives to the point where we're so busy being after things and we've made our lives so complex. Have you noticed how every church who couldn't figure out for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 years, couldn't figure out a way to do church in less than 2.5 hours, suddenly has figured it out overnight how to do church in 45 minutes to an hour? And I would argue that it's very likely that the quality of what they're doing is better because they're developing this discipline of simplicity. This discipline, because let me tell you what wears us out. What wears us out is having complicated my life and then having to spend all of this energy to keep going what I got started. And the reality of it is the blessing of life is developing the discipline of just simplicity. It's right there in the text because God does not give them this, he doesn't read Sun Tzu's The Art of War to them. He doesn't tell them to go read, some book on warfare. He simply says, I'm going to tell you, we're going to make this real easy. Just march and then keep marching. And then at the right time, blow the trumpet and shout. What a simple game plan. And by developing the discipline of simplicity, they wind up getting the victory. Let me give you the fourth one, and then I'm going to jump into where you are on notes, okay? The fourth discipline that it's just in my spirit is the discipline of service and gratitude. And I put these in pairs for a reason because I just want the discipline of service and gratitude. Develop the discipline, and a discipline, y'all, is this activity, this thing I do that is a pattern. And I do it regularly. And in my doing it regularly, it develops me and shows me more about God. That's what I mean about a discipline, right? Because sometimes we have bad disciplines and we have to replace them with good disciplines that are going to bring about life transformation. And so the discipline that I leave you with now is the issue of service. Developing a habit of serving people, developing a habit of serving God, developing a habit, let me go deeper, developing a habit of gratitude. Because let me tell you something, it's easy for you, when you start serving other people and let me help you for a moment. When you start serving, when you driving for Meals on Wheels and you serving a senior citizen because they need food, or you're driving over a bag of groceries for somebody, then suddenly you realize it's not me that folk are bringing groceries to. And out of your service, you well up in a spirit of gratitude because you start recognizing, man, God been good to me. Matter of fact, God been real good to me. And so when you start recognizing, when you start serving other people, it raises up a gratitude. And when we develop a discipline of gratitude, then I'm not waking up, woe is me, and whining and complaining because I've developed a spirit of gratitude. Because I developed a spirit of gratitude and a discipline of gratitude, I'm waking up like, God, you've been good to me. You are everything. You're wonderful. I got to develop. Some of us have developed a discipline of whining or a discipline of complaining. Before you don't even give it a shot and it's already negative because that's the discipline I've created. We've got to develop different disciplines. That's what Joshua 6 is teaching us. And so let me tell you where we left off now, because we left off talking about the issue of some things I need to cease in verse number 18. Chapter 6, verse 18. God tells them, he says, but you keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, lest when you have devoted them, you take any of the devoted things and make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction and bring trouble upon it. So he says, I want you to stop doing certain things. He says, stop doing certain things. That you got to develop the discipline of ceasing. That there's some stuff, let me park here and say this. Sometimes I'm worse off because I'm not ceasing the things that are destroying me. He says, I want you to stop anything that's going to create destruction upon yourself. And I just want to park here and say this to somebody, man. It's just in my heart. I don't know who this is for. But God is like, I'm giving you the power over your own life. You know the cigarettes are killing you. You know the drinking is killing you. You know, I'm not judging y'all. I'm teaching out of love. You know your eating habits are killing you. You know your laziness is killing you. You know it. He says, you can't love me enough that as good as I've been to you to stop the things that are causing destruction. What our lives would be, y'all, if we would just love ourselves enough. Man, just touch yourself and say, man, I love me. I love me. Love you enough to want to live. Love you enough to want to be healthy. Love you enough to want to take care of you. And then he says, it's a discipline. Because we are so accustomed, if we're not careful, because God has been so good, he's so gracious and so merciful. And because of that, we know I mess up and he'll forgive me because he's gracious like that. But we ought not take advantage of the grace of God. And at some point, I need to stop asking for him to fix it. And I need to say, God, let me do some fixing. Now, so we left off there with this issue of ceasing. That's a discipline. Everybody say that's a discipline. That's development. Ceasing certain things are discipline. I'll say this real quick and then I'll move on. Since ceasing certain things are a discipline for Christians, what's the last thing since you've been saved? What's the last thing in the last 6 months, the last 3 months that you have ceased, that you've stopped doing? And so we've got to develop this discipline of ceasing. Verse 19 gives us the next one. Verse 19 of chapter 6, he says, but all silver and gold and every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord. Everybody say holy to the Lord. Are holy to the Lord. They shall go into the treasury of the Lord. Here's the next discipline. The next discipline is the discipline of contributing, the discipline of contribution, the discipline of learning how to give. And let me just be really honest, giving things of value. In other words, giving money. Now, I'm going to park here for a moment. See, when you develop, part of the reason we're not more blessed is because I've not developed the discipline of giving or the discipline of contributing. Why does God say this to them? Because I want us to I want to kill a demon. God is not broke. God has not been furloughed. I need you to understand something. God is like so amazing. He allows stuff to happen on the earth that he's not negatively impacted by. So everybody on the planet is impacted by this season we're in. God is not negatively impacted. He doesn't participate in this. He'll never get sick. He'll never catch the flu. He'll never get pneumonia. He'll never lose his job. He'll never get furloughed. His stuff in glory won't ever be foreclosed on. The chariots will never be, none of that stuff will never be repossessed. So when God says these things of value contribute to the house of the Lord, it's not because he needs money. It's not because he needs something done for him. That's not, so giving is never financial. It's always spiritual. Can I say something to y'all? I hope y'all receive this. You don't need to know Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic. You don't need to know doctrines of pneumatology and soteriology, all that. Let me tell you one of the most theological documents in your house. One of the most theological documents in your house is your bank statement. Your bank statement is filled with your personal theology. And so God says you have to develop the discipline of contributing. I'm grateful. Let me park here and just say thank you because, there are people that drive by our building and deposit offering envelopes in, or they give online, and it's not about them physically being in the room because they have already developed the discipline of contributing. And God says to them very clearly, let me tell you why. It teaches us, it tells us how disciplined we are when we give. It tells me where my priorities are. It tells me how generous I am. It tells me, watch this, how I contribute tells me about how I see my future. Okay, let me talk to my parents for a minute. Part of the reason you put some money aside for your child's scholarship or their college fund is because your money management is teaching you about how you see the future. So because you see college in your child's future, you take responsibility to help pay for it because it's a state. That's why folk don't spend all their paycheck now and they put some in a retirement plan or a pension plan because they see in their future, God, I feel the anointing on this. They see in their future where I'm not going to be working forever. So it's a statement about how I handle things in my future. Let me just say this. Let me say this, y'all. When we give, this verse 18, when we give, it is my way of saying, God, whatever you are doing in the church in people's lives, I want to be a part of it. That's why I'm giving. It's not, I want to be a part of seeing people saved. I want to be a part of seeing kids tutored. I want to be a part of helping displaced people. I want to be a part of feeding hungry people. I want to be a part of making sure people get the job skills necessary. I want to be a part of watching people get healthier lives. I just want to be a part of whatever you are doing in your church, God. That's why you contribute. And so that's the discipline of our contributing. And then here's the last big point, y'all. The last big point is the discipline, and you're going to be surprised by this, of conquering. The discipline of conquering. If you're studying with somebody, just tell them, if I were you, I'd get used to winning. You need to get used to winning. I'm going to say it again. Get used to, matter of fact, you need to type it in. You need to tell everybody in your circle, I'm going to get used to winning. That's because a whole bunch of us are used to losing. Look at verse 20. So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown, and as soon as the people heard the sound of trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. So the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. And then they devoted all in the city to destruction, both men and women, young. See, you missed it. The shout started their discipline of winning. Because the first thing happens is they shout, the wall collapses. But if you keep reading, y'all, that's just the first conquer. That's the first victory. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout. The wall fell down. That's a win. Everybody say that's a win. So the people went up into the city. That's another win. Every man straight before him, and they captured the city. That's another win. They devoted all of the city to destruction. That's another win. Y'all didn't catch it yet. The men they conquered. That was a win. The women they conquered. That was a win. The young they conquered. That was a win. The old, that was a win. The oxen, that was a win. The sheep. See, once you get the first victory under your belt, God is saying, get ready to keep winning. See, conquering, winning is a discipline. When I get up in the morning, I'm ready to see God do something great. I'm ready for great things to happen and move. And so develop the discipline. God, some of us go to bed at night and we wake up with an expectation I'm not going to feel well in the morning. Develop a habit, a discipline that when I get up, I feel great. When I get up, I'm in the right frame of mind. When I get up, it's not woe is me. I'm developing a discipline. Y'all, I'm going to tell y'all right now, y'all better watch being around me because I just don't have all of the negativity, woe is me in my spirit. God has raised up a discipline of conquering. It's a discipline of conquering. And here's the last big thing. Everybody say, because God has a plan. Here's the last big thing about this plan. That's what I've been trying to teach on. This issue of understanding how God's plan is executed. Here's the last element of God's plan, and I want us to grab a hold of this, and then I'll be done teaching for today. So the second big point is God's plan has conquest. I taught that. That plan involves confidence. That plan involves rather determination and discipline. I've spent almost the whole Bible study on this issue of discipline. I cannot underscore it enough. God's plan involves confidence, right? Confident in what God is going to do, confidence in God and confidence in me. Here's the last big point. It begins at verse 21 about God's plan. God's plan involves completion. Everybody say completion. In other words, God's plan involves me actually getting into the spirit of completing something. Now, let me start at verse 21. So they devoted, well, verse 22 rather. But to the two men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, go into the prostitute's house and bring out, oh God, I hear you, Holy Ghost, and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her as you swore to her. Now, can I park here and just say this? Now, this goes back to Joshua 2, when Rahab helps the spies and saves their life. Now, I want you to grab this. This is going to be for somebody. In Joshua 2, she is given a promise. In Joshua 6, the promise is fulfilled. Pastor, where are you going? Where I'm going is too many times we act like, or we forget the chapter 2 people when we get to chapter 6. The folk that help you get to where you are, it is so easy for us to forget about them when we get to where we finally going. And what I love about this in Joshua 6, God is saying, I want you to get this. God is saying, I'm not done yet. What do you mean I'm not done yet? The walls collapse. You read it, Pastor. They did the stuff God said do. They contributed to the Lord and they got a spirit of conquest and they developed all these disciplines. No, God was not done because there was a chapter 2 promise to this woman. So he says, now go get the woman in here in chapter 6. And I want us to understand something. God is a God that does not want us to forget where we came from and the people that helped us get to where we are along the way. I'm saying this for somebody. If you've arrived, you're not done yet until you reach back to help somebody that got you where you are. I mean, as a matter of fact, would you do this today before you go to bed tonight? Would you publicly make a statement about somebody that helped you get to where you are? Would you, in all of your glory and all of your success and you being the person you are, who did you go back to get? To say, I want to thank you. That's this last piece of developing this spirit of completion, this spirit of there's still one more thing I need to do. Now, let me give you the first sub point to this, and then I want to park here for just a minute. The first sub point to this is in God's plan involving completion, letter A, God is the one that executes. Everybody say God executes. God. When I say God executes, I don't mean killing nobody. I mean, God is the one that is bringing it to pass. God is the one. I want to hang out here for just a moment because, it took me a lot of years of no longer quitting. When I was young, I developed a spirit of quitting. I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it anymore. It's harder than I thought. My friends aren't doing it. And I would start something and I would quit it. And the problem was I didn't realize it, but I had developed a spirit of quitting. So when the least thing got hard, I was out of it. Matter of fact, this is our church's 15th anniversary, and it's kind of a joke, we can laugh about it now. When I planted this church 15 years ago, I had to be honest with the folk that helped us start because I had never been on a single job longer than 3 years my whole life. So like every 3 years, I was on to the next thing. And it wasn't always about promotion. Most times it was promotion. But it was really about the fact that I didn't know how to hang in there without quitting. So now that I've been here 15 years, I've never done anything for 15 years. The blessing of it is God has finally raised up in me a spirit of completion. Can I throw this in? I'm just going to throw this in your life. It's not my word, it's Philippians, but I want you to receive it for yourself. He who has begun a good work in you will complete it. You need to get that thing in your spirit. Just put your hands on yourself. Just say it with me. He who has begun a good work in me will complete it. You got to believe that thing. Matter of fact, let me spend a moment with the engine idling for just a moment. Part of God executing his plan on our behalf is making sure that we are engaging in the plan he gave us to engage in. Amen. See, part of the reason I was quitting before is because I was doing stuff God never sanctioned. So part of it is just find a little section on your note to jot some of this down. So that means I need to be selective about what I take on. So I can't start 30 things and finish them all. So if I'm selective and I'm careful about what I take on, God, I'm hearing you. What are you saying for me to take on? Then it's easier for God's plan to be executed because I'm selective. Everybody say be selective. Be selective. I can't say yes to every offer. You can't say, let me tell you why. Because you only have so much time and so much energy. Let me park here and say this. I don't just need to be budgeting my money. I need to be budgeting my time. And I need to be budgeting my energy. And I don't have enough bandwidth. I don't have enough ability to give my time and energy to everything. That's why we start stuff and then don't finish it. Because we're not selective. The reason God is able to execute all of this is because they engage in the plan that God gives them. So I need to be selective, and look, if you don't believe me about this issue of budgeting your time and your energy, God is literally like, you know what? Be careful. So day 1, just march 1 time. Day 2, just march 2 times. Because you only have, please get this, you only have so much energy. You only have so many hours in the day. And so I want you to budget it so you can finish strong. That's what he's teaching us. Really, one other thing about this, though. Ask yourself this question. Before you say yes, before you check the box and say I'm in, ask yourself, is this something I should be committing to? Before you get engaged or married, is this someone I should be committing to? Before you join a church, is this a place I should be committing to? Before you take on a career or a job, is this something I should be committing to? Once the answer is yes, then God raises up a spirit of completion where he can now enable us to finish the work. I'll say one more thing about this. I'll say one more, maybe 2. This issue of taking on what God has called me to take on, follow the path of enjoyment for you. Because let me tell you something. Even in an element of success, it gets rough. And so, that whole thing about young people, listen to me, because I know y'all online watching because you're home from school, you're on your Zoom classes. What your parents told you about doing the stuff you love and the money will follow, there is an element of truth to that. Because you cannot be successful while you're miserable, because if you're miserable, you can't give your best self to something. If you're miserable, you can't give your best self to someone. And so I have to have the ability to follow the path of my enjoyment. And I told you I was going to say 2 more things. This is the last one. This is about developing this spirit of completion. And it took me years to know this. Celebrate along the way. Celebrate along the way. For every moment that I'm a little bit, don't just celebrate accomplishment. Celebrate movement in the right direction. Celebrate the fact that I did better today. I ate right today. I drank my water today. I can't speak about what's going to happen tomorrow, but you know what? Today was a good day. Amen. Come on, just everybody shout it out. Today was a good day. That's what I'm supposed to be. If I can just take this thing, it's some wisdom in one day at a time, because that's all I get to live anyway. And so there's got to be this element, because God is the one who brings the execution of the plan. God executes. Now, this is going to give you something to shout about. Not only does God execute, but in verse 23, y'all, it tells me God also excludes. And let me show it to you. God excludes. Now, this is mind-boggling, y'all. I got just a few minutes, and so look at verse 23, and it says, so the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and mother and brothers and all who belonged to her. And they brought all her relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel. Now, I know that's not deep for y'all. Let me tell you why it's deep. Keep your ribbon in chapter 6 and go back to chapter 2. Now, matter of fact, don't go back to chapter 2 yet. Hold up. Look with me at 6 one more time. And so in chapter 6, it tells us that the seventh time when the priest, verse 16, had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, shout, for the Lord has given us the city. Now watch this. And the city and all that is within it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Right? And he says only Rahab is going to be saved. And so they blow the trumpet. Now watch this, verse 20. He says, so the people shouted and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout. Everybody say the wall fell down. It says the wall fell down flat. Did y'all catch that? Now, remember that. Everybody said the wall fell down, right? The wall fell down. Now go to chapter 2. Look at verse 15. If you look at chapter 2, verse 15, it says, and they're going to put it up for you. Then she let them down by rope. They're talking about Rahab, through the window. Are y'all reading the same Bible I'm reading? For her house was built into the city wall. Wait a minute. Y'all, wait a minute. Her house is in the wall. The wall falls down flat, but she is excluded from the destruction. Woo, God. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't want to get too happy about Bible study, but let me tell you what should be raising up a shout in somebody. You've been around things that have fallen apart, but God didn't allow you to be excluded from it. And I'm here to speak life to somebody. This is not the end. Life is not over. God is going to say, what other folk are experiencing, you're going to be excluded from. God knows how to exclude. There's some people watching me right now that shots were fired off in a place, you were in the building, and yet you didn't get hit because you got excluded. Other folk lost their job, you still working because you got excluded. Other folk got sick, you're still healthy because you got excluded. God knows how to exclude. He knows how to put a bubble around us, y'all. And I love this because when you begin looking at it, we start to see that God knows how to insulate. Everybody shout insulate. God knows how to insulate us from what's going on. At Word, we say, put a holy bubble around me. That's what it was. It was Rahab's house. And I got to be honest with y'all. My mind is blown over this. Because her house is built in the wall. The wall falls flat, but the house is still intact. Oh, God. See, God knows. Can I tell you what happened? If her house was built into the wall and the wall fell flat, everything that fell beneath her served as a foundation that she could land on. And see, I'm speaking life to somebody, that sometimes you'll have rubble all around you and things begin to fall down. And what God is saying is, I'm giving you a foundation to land on. I'm giving you a foundation to make you strong. God excludes, y'all. And then finally, it says in verse 27, I'm done. It says in verse 27, this is how it ends. This is how the chapter ends. So the Lord was with Joshua. Watch this. And his fame was in all the land. Here's the last thing. God exalts. See, Joshua was not trying to make a name for himself. Joshua was just trying to be obedient to what God called him to do. I'm here to tell you, don't do it so your name can get called. Don't do it so that people can know who you are. If God wants you exalted in due season, because Joshua, I want you to get this, y'all. His name is great. Let me just read that one more time. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land. His fame was because the Lord was with him. Now, can that be our fame? Our fame ought not be in how well we teach, how well we preach, how well we sing, how well we play. Our fame ought not be in how successful we are. Our fame ought be in one statement and one statement only: the Lord is with me. Let it be said of us that the Lord is with us. And in this season, I'm here to tell you, God is with you. God is with you. God is the one that exalts. And so as we finish up today, I just wanted to remind you about the value of our fighting for the promise and what it looks like in terms of my work and my energy. I'm closing when I say this, and I'm praying. I've got to develop a discipline. Everybody say a discipline. God has me in a season of developing new disciplines. That's all Joshua 6. So I want to apologize to you. I shouldn't be making these blanket statements. We're going to be better when we come out of this. Some of us are going to be much worse. The difference is, if you make up in your mind today, I'm going to develop a different set of habits, a different set of disciplines, then yes, when I come out of this, I'm going to be better. Let me give you two real quick. I'm going to develop discipline of prayer life. I gave you 4 at the beginning. I'm going to develop discipline of Bible study. I'm going to be online watching Bible study every week. You know what? I'm going to be a part of a church because I want to be a part of what God is doing in the church. And so today, if you don't have a relationship with the Lord, you don't have a church home where you're growing and serving, I would love to pastor you. I have to do it from a distance right now, but we love to have you at Word Tabernacle. And so there are links available for you to click on. Would you send us your prayer requests? Every week we're going through these prayer requests. We want to pray for you. We learn the value of contributions. And so today I want to ask you, if you've been kind of on the sidelines and you've not been adversely or negatively impacted financially, this is the season where you've got to continue to be faithful to God and to the ministry. Thanks for listening to Orthos. I hope you enjoyed today's Bible study. If you've got questions or comments or feedback, I'd love for you to share it with me. You can email me at james@jamesgaillard.com. I would also encourage you to follow me on one of my social media outlets. Go ahead and subscribe, either at Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram. Again, thanks for listening. See you next week.